Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Emily Counts, and I am the Community Advancement Coordinator here at ACCE. Welcome to today's webinar led by Melissa Vance, President and CEO of the Wayne County Area Chamber of Commerce. This webinar is designed especially for new chamber event planners and will provide you with the tools, advice, and strategies you need to get and stay organized. Before I turn this program over to Melissa, I have a few housekeeping items. First, all attendees are in listen-only mode during the webinar to avoid background noise. Second, after the presentation, we will have time for questions, which you can ask using the question function of the webinar. The question box is on the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Just type in your question, and I will read the question to the speaker. If we run out of time and don't get to your question, or if you have a question you would prefer to discuss with us individually offline, please feel free to contact Melissa directly. Her contact information will be included in the presentation. And we at ACCE can also get in touch with you afterwards, after the webinar. Finally, third, the presentation and handouts for this webinar are uploaded to the webinar panel. Just find the box titled Handouts and click to download. We will also post these documents along with the webinar recording if you would prefer not to download them during the presentation. And last but certainly not least, this webinar is being recorded and should be on the ACCE website on the ACCE University webpage by Monday, November 11th. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce our amazing speaker for this afternoon. So this is Melissa Vance, who is currently serving as the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Wayne County Area Chamber of Commerce. Melissa's tenure at the Chamber began as the Director of Education and Programs, which included the responsibility of events. She has worked as a staff lead for 4 of the Chamber's 6 committees, and under her leadership, the Events Committee saw a record number in attendance and dollars raised. Without further ado, I will hand this over to Melissa.
Thank you so much, Emily. That was very kind of you. It's kind of humbling to be sitting here and listening to someone talk about you, especially, when you look in the mirror every day, you just see ordinary. And it's very humbling to hear somebody say some of those things. So thank you. I am really excited to be able to share just some things with you all that are listening today that I've learned over the last couple decades of my career. And I did not go to school to be an event planner. I don't have a degree in event planning. These things that I'm going to share with you, I've just basically learned through the School of Hard Knocks, and hopefully I'll be able to share a few things with you that you can take away and not have to learn through the School of Hard Knocks, but be able to implement at the end of the webinar. I'm sure there'll be some things that I share with you that you are going to hear and hopefully be reaffirmed that you're doing things just right. You'll hear some things and think, yeah, we're definitely doing that better. And then hopefully you'll hear some things that and see some tools that you can use to improve what you're already doing. I am going to go ahead and get started now. I think we tested. There we go. All right. So my mantra is, when the going gets tough, the tough are already organized. And so being organized, it might be the most boring thing that you do if you're not OCD like I am, but it will definitely save you some headaches in the long run. One of the first events that I really took ownership of and ran with was when I was working at an area hospital. I was doing their large fundraising events, and this particular one was called Bravo, and it's used to raise money for breast cancer patients, awareness, research, that kind of thing. And so people would decorate bras and submit them and what have you. And so through that event, after people submitted their decorated bras to be voted on, and then we had a signature event where we gathered them up. We had an art gallery, we did an auction, all of these things. As organized as I thought I was, I realized I wasn't organized enough because at the last minute I was scrambling to get things done and pulled together in the timeline that I actually had. So that's when I was determined to do things better. And every event that we do, we try and do things a little bit better the next time. So one of the ways that we do this here in our office is we use this budget tool, and this is one of the documents that can be downloaded later if you haven't already done so. It's an Excel workbook. There are 3 sheets. One of them is for expenses, one of them is for income, and one of them, which is the cover sheet, kind of has those dollars that flow to the front and show some graphs. And so I'll share that with you in a minute. But when you look at the event budget, this is just some things. This is not an actual event, but some things that you want to think about, different categories, whether it's the room, hall, and fees and the things that are associated with the site, the things that are associated with the decorations and publicity. And you can change the names of these categories, the items underneath, and I do that regularly depending on what event we're doing. But it's always important to me that I plug in all of the estimated expenses ahead of time. And before you start down the road too far, you really need to know what you think you're going to spend, because that's what determines how much you have to make to meet budget. And then your goal would be how much you can make above meeting budget, just, for that extra little win. But if you don't know what you're going to spend, you never know how you can reach those other pieces. So if you look at each one of the categories and in the estimated and the actuals, those feed up there to the top gray boxes, the 18,000 estimated, the 17,000 actual. As the actuals come in, I always plug those in as I go. Then there is a spreadsheet, as I mentioned, for income. And on the income side, again, you can really change this up to be whatever it is that fits your organization and how you do things. But in this example, for the admissions, we estimated 300 people attending. There were actually 326. And for members, the cost was $50. And then below that, you can see the counts for non-members at the cost of $75 and how that flows in. And then in this example, ads in the program, you can put some things in there. If you're doing an auction, you could plug numbers in for an auction. For sponsors, you can change the titles of your sponsors. For this example, we have gold, silver, and bronze. So estimated 10 gold, actual 11 gold at $5,000 per, and then you can see how those feed over. And again, they all feed back up in that top gray box area. And so this is where it kind of all comes together, is on this cover page. Those numbers feed this front. And so you can see on the estimated total profit is $32,000. the actual $31,575. And if your general budget says for this event that you should have made 25,000, well, you just outperformed. And it's a really good way. I know that you report your numbers back to your board at the end of an event, and these kind of documents or graphs are really good for reporting back to your board or your members or whoever it is that you're accountable to be able to show that you're doing what you're there to do and how you're helping the organization sustain. So hopefully that makes sense. Again, at the end, or if you have questions, type them in the box and we will answer those at the end of the presentation. Another Excel workbook that I keep, I just call checklists, and I change it for the event. So annual dinner checklist, golf classic checklist, whatever that might be. So the top part is an example of one of the pages on that checklist, and it's my task tab, if you will. And so you can see over on the left side, I try to go through every single little thing that needs to be done and think it all through ahead of time. Whether it's picking up the awards from a vendor or determining your theme and who does that and when does it have to be done. And then after making that task, going through and doing the tasks, then it's easy to say who it is that should be responsible for, who's the team member that's responsible. If you work for a large organization, you're going to have more variety of names, more people kind of pitching in there. If you're in a small organization like I am, we have 3 people that are full-time on staff, 2 interns that rotate out regularly, and then we have some really strong chamber committees that we utilize, and we'll talk more about volunteers later, but that just gives you an idea of our organization. We have 500, approximately, just over 500 members. So as you think about your organization, if you are a chamber of 1,500, you can kind of put that into perspective of the scale that you're looking for. Or on the opposite end, if you're a small chamber and you have 150 members, you can kind of pull this back a little bit. Don't get hung up in the numbers that you're seeing today, but I hope that it's helping you think through a process, if that makes sense. In that column C, you'll see, you can kind of see that it says days left. For me, it was important to do the days out from the event. So 90 days out from the event, we do this. 180 days out from the event, we do that. Because often you start planning an event 6, 9 months, maybe even 12 months ahead of time, you're going to cross your years. So if you're working now on an event that's in January, you're going to cross your years. Well, if you sort by due date, month and day, it's going to get out of order. So the days left. And then it also helps a lot when you go to revise the document for next year. You don't have to come up with, well, when should we have this due? You just match it up with the days out. And if you don't know this already, you can Google calculators that will help you figure this out. Calculators, how many days from the event, and you can either put in the date and it'll tell you how many days from another date, or you can put your event date, 180 days, and it will tell you what the day is. So in this example, July 26th. The sheet below that is a sheet that I use to keep track of our sponsors and how many seats they get versus how many have been confirmed. So you'll see our diamond sponsors get a table of 8, but this particular sponsor number 3, they want 32 seats. So I have the formula set to calculate how much they would owe out of pocket for the additional seats. We handhold our sponsors. Oops, sorry about that. There we go. We handhold our sponsors a little bit, so we follow up with them regularly, and I know you probably do that some too, or you have some VIP, maybe it's your board members, or it's a whole lot easier to keep track of those VIP businesses or individuals and what they get in a spreadsheet versus trying to pull separate report from Chambermaster or MemberClicks or whatever system you might be using for your event module. My goal is to think of everything. We have an emergency kit that we put together. It's a large clear tote, and we throw everything in there that we might possibly need at a venue site. So crazy things like string and zip ties and lots of pairs of scissors, pliers, screwdrivers, Sharpies, you name it. If you think you might need it, put it in a kit, and then you can just refresh that before each event. But knowing where all of those things are regularly, it will save your life later. You won't be running to the store while you have volunteers there trying to get things decorated or putting on the finishing touches. You'll have all that there, and everybody will know where to find it. Really think through the event ahead of time. Our team gets together, and I try and think through the event multiple times through the process, but at least by the day before the event, our team gets together and we walk through it just as if the event were happening. So we stand at the registration table and we talk through. Somebody walks up to register and here's what they get and where they go and is everything there, and then move to the next step, and just making sure that everything is where it needs to be, that there's somebody who knows what they're doing, and everything is thought of. Making packing lists while you're in the event planning process also saves time later. So as you think of it, I might be in the middle of a project that doesn't have anything to do with events, and suddenly it hits me, oh yeah, I need to remember to take vases or whatever that might be. Instead of trying to remember it and knowing you're not going to remember everything, just throw that on a packing list and keep track of it as you go. You can always go back to it. Same thing with shopping lists. You don't need to run to the store every time you think of something you're out of. Just throw it on a shopping list, and the last week, go get everything. As long as you know it's going to be in stock. Obviously, don't wait for that key decorating piece that may be out of stock later, but for the most part, the little things can just be all picked up at once. In fact, if you have a list and you don't have time to do it, that's a good thing to go send a volunteer for. Phone numbers. Have everyone's phone numbers handy. I have a list of that for all of our volunteers' cell phone numbers, our staff cell phone numbers of all of your vendors, people that are important at the venue. You don't want to have to go chasing that down. And also share that with your team and with your volunteers. So if something comes up, they don't have to find you. They can deal with it themselves unless it's of high importance. So speaking of volunteers, it's really important to use them or you will lose them. Volunteers want to feel needed. And if they show up to decorate and it's all done, they're going to feel like you don't need them. And the next time you ask them to come sign up to volunteer to come decorate, they won't do it because they can think of a million other things they could be doing or getting accomplished in the office or wherever they work or at home, depending on what their um, role is. So use them or lose them. Make them feel needed. They will be your cheerleaders. If they feel ownership of an event, they're going to work harder to make it special. They're going to work harder to drive your attendance, and they're going to work harder to drive your revenue. So all of those things together, very important. Here are some pictures, some examples of some volunteer things that we've done. This was some things that we hung from the ceiling at our annual dinner, and those actually are long pieces of fabric that a volunteer spent a lot of time cutting out all of those long pieces of fabric and attaching them. And these guys showed up to help us assemble them and figure out how to hang them from the ceiling. If you are like our chamber, our events committee is made up mostly of women. There are some things, as much as I want to say I'm a woman and I can do everything, there are some things that are really nice to have men around for. The heavy lifting, the high climbing, the engineering side of things, a lot of times they are more, can't say more skilled. It's not definitely a man thing, but there are things that it's just nice to have some men around too. They bring a different skill set at times. And so these men that are standing around here are husbands. So if you have an events committee that's all women, encourage them to bring coworkers, husbands, sons, whatever, along with them, because the more hands you have, the quicker you'll get things done. You can kind of see those things I was talking about hanging from the ceiling right there. Another important part of volunteers management is the training. You want to definitely take time to meet with your volunteers in every area. So of your very large events especially, meet with the people who are doing the registration and make sure they all understand the process and what their role is. Have a specific time that you tell them, be here at 5:20 for the registration meeting. And then know that you're probably not going to start till 5:25 because a lot of times people either don't get there right on time or they want to talk for a couple minutes before they actually get started. So tell them 5 or 10 minutes before you really want to do the meeting. That's really important. And I know you've probably figured that out. The other piece is assign a leader in each one of those areas. So if you have a strong committee person, talk to them ahead of time and ask them to be the point person for that area. So if during the event there is an issue, people can go to that person first before coming to you. It will save you time in the long run. Signup.com is just an example of a website that you can use to have your volunteers sign up. They can choose their task, they can choose the time that they're going to be there, and they can go in and make changes later. There are other websites or apps that can be used as well, but that's an example. Make sure, again, that your volunteers have your cell phone number and a point of contact. And again, involve them in the process. If they've done registration for the past 4 years, they know where the struggles are or where the bottlenecks are, and you want to hear from them and have them help determine what the best method is for the best outcome. Community partners are some people, businesses that we are able to tap into for low or no cost enhancements to our events. And so it was something I definitely wanted to cover with you today. Again, it helps drive your dollar, but it improves the overall experience of your event. So, for example, we have three, there's more than that, but three really large radio stations here in our community. And we pull them in as a partner and we trade. So we give them a sponsorship at our event in exchange for their promotion. And they bring us on air to talk live multiple times before an event. They run commercial spots on air multiple times, regularly, just like any other ad campaign on their stations. And then many times they show up at the events and do live remotes. They interact with your guests. It improves the experience and it drives attendance and it gives them exposure. So it's a win-win. This was our annual dinner last January. We had a theme called A Million Dreams, and every piece of it kind of tied into The Greatest Showman, which is one of my favorite movies ever. And we had girls from a local dance studio come and do some choreography to some live music that we had. And at the very end, they popped the confetti, and it just made for this outstanding celebratory effect at the end of an awards night. We paid nothing for them except some food, and they got the exposure. Their parents learned more about the chamber. The girls were excited to participate and be able to be a part of an event that had 600 community leaders. And again, it cost us nothing or almost nothing. When you look at this room from the back, you see the cameraman in the back center. That's from our public access TV station. And again, we trade with them for sponsorship. So we make them a sponsor. We give them a table that they can fill at our event. They do some amazing videos for us to recognize our award winners. And they film the event, upload it later to their YouTube channel that we can share, and the parts that aren't copyrighted in some way, they run those on air on their station. And again, all of that's complimentary in exchange for a sponsorship. It's so worth it for us. It's very worth it for them because they get to show off what they can do to all of the business leaders in town who later come to them and hire them to do videos for them. So again, a win-win, but it's a huge enhancement. This is a sign that we hung from the ceiling a couple years ago. We had a theme called Together We Win. It was a sports theme, and so this was our scoreboard. The date was 1/20/2017, so that's why those numbers were up there. Our graphic designer designed these panels. A sign company printed them for us and donated them, and a construction company built that frame for us and hung it from the ceiling for us. So that was just another fun thing that cost us nothing except a little bit of imagination to be able to pull it off. We partner with the symphony, and a lot of times they will sponsor an ensemble to play at one of our events. So this is one of the musicians that come, and they play very upbeat, energetic music, but it's live, it's quality, it enhances what we do, it showcases their talent, and they sell tickets later because of it. So again, win-win. It's important to always think of what's in it for them and pitch it to them when you sell it. Another one of our construction companies, they do bar facades for us. Instead of having just a regular bar at our events, they do these facades, and our bartenders serve out of these. This one was a world theme called Local Talent Global Reach, and one of the sections of the room was Paris, and so this was the Paris bar. This was another year where we had a movie theme, and this was the bar that they put together for that year. There were 3 windows that they served out of and had some posters there. And the folks in costume are from the local community theater. They came and roamed around and did pictures with people during the cocktail hour, which was kind of fun. Moving on, after things are over, it's really important to say thank you to everyone for anything. Anything that they do, say thank you. You know, we do handwritten thank you notes for all of our partners, people like the ones that I just spoke of, the volunteers. I almost always do handwritten thank you notes to our team internally just for the great job that they do and the extra hours that they put in. It's not easy on the team, but it's important that they feel appreciated. Your board or people that play a role in the presentations, that's really important as well. After it's over with, the SWOT analysis is what the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We assess what we did afterward and keep a record of that and pull it out before we start planning for the next year. We do a SWOT analysis internally with our team, and then we do one with our committee. And then we do surveys. We typically use SurveyMonkey, but of course there are other survey tools to survey our guests and get feedback. And when you're planning for next year, pull out all of those and really look at them, take them to heart. Some things you won't be able to implement because you just can't, and you have to be okay with that. You're never going to make 100% of the people 100% happy, and you have to be okay with that. But when there is constructive feedback, it's important to take that to heart because that's how you grow and you get better every single year. Again, surveying. You can survey your volunteers, your sponsors, your attendees. And so that is all that I have as far as the presentation goes, but I am more than willing to take some of your comments, your questions, and hear what you have to say. If there are things that you want to know a little more about, I'm more than happy to elaborate. So, Emily, I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Melissa, for that. I don't know about y'all, but I am personally a huge fan of spreadsheets, and there cannot be enough spreadsheets in my life. So thank you, Melissa, for sharing some of yours with us. I really appreciate it, and I think I'm going to be stealing a couple of these. I know Susan already has. So if you have any questions that you would if you have any questions that you would like to ask Melissa at this time, please use the chat box feature, which is on the right-hand side of your screen. We have a couple of questions that are just pouring in already. So, Melissa, how many events does your chamber host per year?
That is a really good question. I don't have the exact number off the top of my head. I can tell you, I can kind of go in regard to scale. We have 5 what I consider very large scale events: an annual dinner, a golf classic, We do a farm tour because we're in the Midwest, and ag is a huge economic driver here. And so we do a farm tour, and we actually take a lot of people who never set foot on a farm and teach them the business of farming, and they find it interesting. So it's kind of a fun event, but it's a large event. We do Taste of Wayne County and a business expo that is combined. And then we do a Community Improvement Awards luncheon where we recognize businesses that are new builds or expansions, or they've made some sort of exterior improvement. So it's more about beautification. So those are our large events. But then we do educational luncheons, legislative forums, networking events, which we call the Chamber 535, and we do them all at 5:35 p.m. And other small things throughout the year. So a holiday open house, just things like that. Last year we brought Disney Institute to town, which was an unusual, not an annual large event, but that was something that we did that was a whole lot of fun. And if you haven't brought the Disney Institute to your area, I highly recommend it. We were just hoping to break even. We were able to actually make a little bit of money, and it was fabulous. So things like that. So we do some standards, and then we try and do something special.
Thank you for that. All right. Keep those questions pouring in. And Melissa, I will have to say, in between the questions, there have been a lot of thank yous for the handouts that you shared. So on behalf of everyone sending them in, thank you very much for sending those.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Your next question is, when you ask your members to donate their services, do you specify near the bar, etc., who donated that service?
So we don't do it there. So for instance, the construction company that does the bar facade, we do a special thank you in our program for that. And because of the hours that they put into that, they actually hire artists to paint them. We have 2 bars every year, and they hand paint those and hand assemble those. Because of that, we make sure that one of our board members does a special thank you from the stage for that one. So it really depends on the scope, on how they're thanked, but we want to make sure that they are thanked well and that people know.
Awesome.
I guess I will tag on to that a minute, Emily. Some events, it's good to put a sign near something like that. Like, for instance, if you had somebody that did something special, I know. We have a hole-in-one prize. That's a car from one of our car dealerships at our golf classic. We want their name all over that. It's very appropriate to have their name all over that car at the golf classic. If we started putting names on everything at our annual dinner that we try and have be a little more gala style, it can get tacky. And, it can cheapen it a little bit. And so the reason we haven't done that is because we want to be sure that the quality remains there. And I think they appreciate a thank you from the stage or something in the program even more than by the bar itself.
Thank you for that answer. Your next question is, where is it? Do you use digital platforms along with your spreadsheet? My organization uses digital platforms, and they don't have the flexibility of spreadsheets. How do you combat that if you use both?
I'm not 100% sure what digital platform you're talking about. we do have, our database. We use Chamber Master, so we have the event module, and we use that a lot. We don't use a project-based digital module. So for us, the answer would be no, unless you were talking about your database, member clicks, or something like that. I do know other chambers that use more project management things. So for us, the answer is no. I'm an Excel fanatic, and I really like the flexibility, like you pointed out, to be able to just take something and continually tweak it throughout the process. For me, it keeps me organized, and it's fluid, and it's free, which is nice.
I think that's the best part as well. Your next question is, do you have any tips for places that you advertise your volunteer needs? Which of these places do you think yields the best response?
We're fortunate, to be honest, to rarely need to advertise for volunteers. We have enough partners between our board committees, and just some other local connections that we're able to have enough volunteers. One of the things that's maybe a little unusual is that at the end of our annual dinner, and you saw the picture. In fact, let me see if I can go back up to that real quick. So at this event, it takes us a week to set this completely up, because we do so many things with lighting and all of that stuff. And so if you have an event like that, you know what I'm talking about. It's absolutely exhausting for our employees and for our committee. Our events committee, we have probably 20 or 25 really active members of that events committee. The list of people on the committee is much longer than that, but those that show up all the time, probably around 20, 25. But at the end, we are exhausted. So one of the maybe unusual things that we do is we contact a school system in our county that has a really strong FFA, Future Farmers of America, for those of you that aren't in farming communities like ours. But it could be a sports team or anything like that. But for us, we just know that this is a really hardworking, good group of students. We pay them $250 to come in the day after this event, and they tear the whole thing down in a couple hours. And it is money well spent. They love getting the donation for their program, so that's helpful. Aside from that, anytime we need more volunteers, usually our board or our committee has a pool of people they can pull from their own businesses to come in and lend extra hands.
Thank you for that. Your next question is, do you find a struggle to get members to donate their services for free? Our members are very reluctant to donate unless they see immediate return.
I think sometimes you have to share with them your vision, more than I need a sign. You have to cast vision. There are podcasts that you can listen to on casting vision, by the way. So if you are familiar with LeaderCast, I know they have some, but being able to have a complete vision of what you want to accomplish for an event I can tell you the first time I went to this construction company and said, I want you to build a bar facade. I didn't just say, could you build a bar facade for us? I laid out the entire plan. It was the world themed one. So the Paris one that I showed you. Local talent, global reach. In the past, our annual dinner had been, before I came to the chamber, it was this, mostly this large. It was just a little bit smaller. They had one screen. They didn't use lighting. It wasn't gala style. It was just kind of like we came to a metal building in the fairgrounds and sat in chairs and had very simple table decorations and did a program where people read from the script. And I wanted it to be something that people wanted to come to every year. So really thinking outside the box, coming up with this huge theme, and then going to this company and saying, I have a great idea, but I can't do it on my own and I need you. And what do you think about this? And here's what we're doing in the other areas, and we're going to have sections in different countries, and we're adding 2 screens, and we're hanging these things from the ceilings. But one great idea I have is to do a bar facade where it just adds to the ambiance, and if you can help us with this, we'll recognize you in this way. And they got excited about it. And they started talking about, well, we could do this and we could do that. They went back, and what I envisioned was not even near the level that they delivered, because they got excited about it and they ran with the idea. So I would say, more than just asking somebody to do a task, cast the vision and tell them why you need them, and then how you're going to recognize them.
That is really good advice. Thank you for sharing that. The next question is, what percentage of your overall budget do you expect to be covered by the sponsorship?
Honestly, that's a good question. If you will give Emily your contact information or shoot me an email, I will give you a more specific answer later. I'm not sure I can answer that right off the top of my head, because I will say it does depend on the event itself.
That's reasonable. Your next question is, what events have you canceled from your roster in the last 5 years, and why was that decision made?
That is an area that's an area that we struggle with, I will be honest. We have pitched to our board canceling a couple of our events, and given reasons why, it's really hard to sometimes convince a board to do that because they see value in it or they really like it. An example I will give is our farm tour. Our farm tour is so much fun. It sells out weeks before it actually takes place. People bring their whole families. They talk about it for a month ahead of time and a month after. I mean, the one we had just this year, we did it in an orchard, and there was just a lot of components. People love it, but we don't make any money from it. And, well, I can't say no money. We make little money from it, and that was by design. It started out as we just wanted to educate people on the importance of ag in the community. That's how it started, and then people fell in love with it, so we kept it. A lot of man hours go into that one, and when we look at the percentage of ag chamber members that we have, it's a low percentage of our overall membership. And so we have hinted at the idea of either eliminating that or greatly scaling it down. And we have some board members that, like I said, they just really love it and they don't want to get rid of it. So it's tough. In fact, we were on a call with the ACCE events advisory board yesterday, and that was, one of the ideas that we talked about for a webinar is how do you assess your events and determine what to keep and what to pitch. So hopefully you'll be able to hear more about that in the coming years. But other than that, we've not gotten rid of a whole lot in the last 4 years. Hopefully we'll be changing some things up in the year to come.
That is very well said. Your next question is, with regards to sponsorships, do you create any special sponsorships or are they all standardized?
We do create special sponsorships. So for each one of our events, they're not all gold, silver, bronze. I mean, I put that in the spreadsheet just because it's easy for people to relate to, but we try and name our sponsors after whatever the event is. So, for the farm tour, for instance, we have a harvest sponsor and what have you. So that's just kind of a fun thing. But in addition to the standard, we might have 4 sponsorship levels per event. But for our golf classic, so if you're one of the top level sponsors, you get a pin flag, you get a whole sign, a team, your large logo on everything, you get all those things, those packages. But in addition to that, we have a food court sponsor. So somebody could pay X amount of dollars to sponsor the food at the classic. We have an award sponsor at our annual dinner. So for a few $1,000s, somebody can sponsor the awards and actually be up on stage with us and shake hands as we're giving the awards out. So we do a few special things as well.
Thank you for that. This is a fun question. What are your top 5 favorite event themes? I really like your movie theme.
That was a lot of fun. We did that, and for us, oh goodness, that's a really good question because we've had some fun ones. So the one that I talked about that was the world theme, the local talent global reach, we pulled that together and we sell out at 600. That's the capacity of that venue. And when you go to an event with 600 people, that's 75 tables or something like that. And you walk into a room that's a sea of tables that all look the same. Finding table 23 is really hard. And it's not fun. So we divided our room up in quadrants, and each one of the quadrants was a different country. And each one of the countries was decorated different, had different color tablecloths, had different things hanging from the ceiling, different decorations for the centerpieces and things in that area. So instead, when they registered, the program looked like a passport. And they walked in and they got their passport, and on the back, it looked like, there had been some passport stamps on there. And we wrote in one of the boxes their country. So they might have been in China, 32. Then when they go in, they can easily see what area of the room China was, and then go find table 32 in that area, which made it more fun. And again, one of them was Brazil, so we had a bar that was in the Brazil area, which was kind of a cabana style and fun. So I really loved that one. This one that we just did, A Million Dreams, we had some singers that moved to the area that we had heard about that used to perform on Broadway when they lived in New York City. And so we had them come and sing some of the songs, and they brought their daughter, who was, I think, 8, who sang with them some of the songs, and then having the dance, those things, that was a lot of fun as well. The Together We Win with the sports theme, even though you would think that would make it not gala style, we figured out a way to keep it really classy. It was fun but classy. So for instance, we had tall vases, those tall pillar vases. We put basketballs that glowed on top of them, and then we filled them with lights for centerpieces. And so it still was kind of gala style, but all of these themes that I'm mentioning, it was a lot of fun to tie into the script for the evening and the awards. And, as you're celebrating people, you're bringing people up to the stage, or companies up to the stage that have done great things. Together we win. This is how we do it. This is how our community advances. So tying it all together, not just with the decorations and that piece, but making sure that whoever's in charge of your script and your program and your presentations get it too.
Thank you, Melissa, for that. We have time for one more question, and before I get to that question, if you've asked a question and we haven't gotten to it yet, no worries. We have a record of the questions, and we will get back to you with answers as soon as we can. Just before we sign off and get to the last question, I just want to remind you that this recording and a copy of the presentation will be on our ACCE webinar page by Monday, November 11th, and you can find it by clicking on the professional development, hovering over ACCE University Online, and then clicking on webinars. Our next ACCE University webinar will be on Thursday, November 14th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. An intentional, clearly articulated strategic plan is key to implementing your organization's mission, maintaining relevance, and driving meaningful change in your community. This webinar, facilitated by ACCE President and CEO Sherry Ann Kelly, featuring David Brown, President and CEO of the Greater Omaha Chamber, and Kate Bates, President and CEO of the Arlington, Virginia Chamber. Learn more about how ACCE developed its current strategic plan and how two of your peers set their own chamber's strategic direction and priority using 2 very different models and processes. All right, and with that, our last question for today. Do you use Pinterest for your ideas? If so, how can we follow your pins and boards?
Absolutely. Pinterest is one of my favorite pastimes. When I can't sleep at night, I get up and I, just look at Pinterest boards until I fall asleep. So that's kind of fun. Yes, you can. And I will send that to Emily to share as well.
All right. Thank you so much. And thank you, Melissa, for speaking and sharing your spreadsheets, your wisdom, your experience, your ideas. I appreciate it. I know multiple of our members have sent me thank you notes appreciating it. So thank you very much for sending that. Like I said earlier, if your question wasn't answered, we will email you today or tomorrow with that answer. So thank you very much, and I hope you have a great rest of your Thursday, and I hope you have a wonderful Friday and weekend. Thank you.
Thanks for listening in, everyone.
Thank you and goodbye.